Hello friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and in today's video I wanted to talk to you about how I am preparing for the upcoming canning season. If you've been with me for a while, you know that in the month of August I do a challenge where I try to preserve something every day, no matter how little. And we're reaching that point where the garden is starting to produce and I need to make a plan. People often ask, you're a really busy mom, you homeschool, you have 8 kids, how do you handle all of that food preservation and still get everything done? Well, just like with anything else in my life, if I want to accomplish it, I need to go into the season where I'm going to be doing that work with a good plan. So let me show you how I'm doing that. I took some time this week to sit down with my planner and kind of think about everything that is starting to come to its season in the garden that I'm going to be harvesting here in quantities that will be big enough for preserving. I sat down and I kind of listed those items and how I plan to preserve them so that I can go into the month of August with a list of things that I can pick from every day. And here is that list that I came up with. I wanted a minimum of 30 items. And so every day I can kind of look at my list and think, oh, okay, I want to can some green beans. Let's go out and harvest a bunch of those today. Or, oh, I would like to can some hot peppers. I'm going to pickle them. Let's go out and do that. And so I just have this nice list here that has everything organized, everything planned out. And each day I can just tackle one item on that list. The next way I'm really working to get organized is by making sure all of my preservation spaces are cleaned out. I'm kind of cycling through last year's things and getting those out of the freezer, organizing all of the meat that we just put in the freezer. I'm doing the same thing with my canning shelves and just really getting things ready to start filling up the space. And the final way that I'm working to prepare for the heavy canning season is I'm doing some meal prep to kind of plan ahead. So let me show you some of that I'm doing. First thing I need to do is grind a bunch of wheat because we are going to be doing a bunch of baking and making some breakfasts ahead of time for the busy season. So I'm just picking out some recipes and we're going to make some breakfasts ahead of time because not only is August the month of food preservation, it's the month we head back to school. And homeschool will occupy most of our mornings, starting after breakfast up until the point of nap time. And so I would like to have some breakfast pre-made to make my mornings go a little easier so that I can head out to the garden and do my harvesting when I would normally be prepping breakfast, so that then after school's done in the afternoon during naps, I can do my preservation work. One of the first things I decided I'm going to make ahead are some breakfast cookies. These are a favorite. I have my ingredients out. We have some raw honey here. We have some cashew pieces. I have some eggs. And we have a half pint of pear sauce from 2022 we need to use up. These are some dried cranberries. We have cinnamon, baking powder, baking soda, vanilla extract, olive oil, some rolled oats, and then that fresh ground wheat that just came out of the mill. So let's go ahead and get all of this mixed up and ready. We are going to start out with 3 cups of the freshly ground flour. If I were using pre-ground, I would just use 2 cups. And we have 2 cups of oats, just a little bit of cinnamon we're sprinkling in there. And then we're going to do some more of our dry ingredients. We have 1 teaspoon of baking soda. We're going to do a half a teaspoon of baking powder. We're going to get all of those dry ingredients all mixed together. And then we're going to add our wet ingredients. So we have our 3 eggs there. The next thing is a little bit of vanilla extract. I am adding a half a cup of olive oil. And then I would normally put a cup of sunflower seed butter, but I don't have any. So instead, I'm doing this cup of pear butter, and that will be just fine to replace that with. We are going to add just some honey for sweetening. It's probably about a cup of honey. And then to that, we're going to add our dried cranberries and our cashew pieces. You could add anything here, raisins, chocolate chips, any kind of nuts that you want. And these are all healthy ingredients that would be great for a breakfast. So even though we're making a cookie and the kids think it's a cookie, all of these ingredients are healthy and wonderful to eat for breakfast. There's some protein in there. You've got the oats, which are a good breakfast food. They're going to be sweet with the honey. And then you've got extra protein in the nuts and some fruit in the raisins. So just a wonderful little breakfast. So what I like to do is I freeze these ahead of time in these Super Cubes silicone cookie trays here. We just try to kind of flatten them in here so that the lid can fit on. And then these will go into the freezer. And then when I want to make a breakfast, I will pull 2 of these out and put them on the cookie sheet. I will start the oven, and as it's preheating, I will already have the frozen cookie cubes on the trays, and they'll thaw during the preheating process and then bake for the appropriate amount of time in the oven, which will be on 350 for, about 10 minutes or so. So this is what they look like when they come out of the freezer. You can just pop them right out of those silicone molds and put them on your cookie sheet. And when they bake up, you get perfectly circular uniform cookies, which I love. So this is just a great idea for a quick and easy breakfast. I can scramble up some eggs really quickly with the cookies and serve that with them, and it takes very little time. The next breakfast that I'm prepping ahead of time is some zucchini bread. I'm just going to make the batter for it. So I'm starting with 4 cups of this freshly ground flour. I would do 3 cups if it was pre-ground. We have 1 teaspoon of salt. Next, we're going to do 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and we're also going to do 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. You could add nutmeg, any other spices that you like in your zucchini bread. We're going to mix all of those dried ingredients together. Now we're going to go ahead and add our oil. We're going to do 1 cup of olive oil. You could do butter or any fat that you like in your baking. We have 3 eggs. You could do about 2 cups of sugar, but we're using honey here, and I'm just doing it kind of eyeballing enough sweetener. It's probably the equivalent of about 1.5 cups of honey there to sweeten this zucchini bread. Next, we're adding a little bit of vanilla extract. And then finally, we are going to grate in our zucchini. It is the time of year. We have lots of zucchini coming in from the garden. So one way to preserve it is to go ahead and put it in the muffins or the bread that you're making and freeze that ahead of time. So I could bake my bread or my muffins and then put the frozen actual muffins in the freezer. But what I prefer to do is make up the batter and then freeze the batter. And so I'm mixing this all together, and then what I'm going to do is put these also in silicone molds and get them in the freezer. And then the night before, I will just pull one of these out of the freezer, let it thaw overnight in the refrigerator, and then that morning I have my batter all ready to go. I can just stick it in the oven and let it bake while I head out to the garden and do my harvest work. And the children can help keep an eye on that. These super cubes in this shape have this nifty little bowl here that you can pop them out while they're frozen and let them thaw directly in this bowl, and you could even bake them in that if you had a smaller family. It will take me 2 of these for my family. On to the next breakfast, we are going to make ahead some pancake batter. So I'm going to do 4 cups of the freshly ground flour. I would do 3 cups if I were using pre-ground flour. And to that, we are going to add our baking powder. We're going to do 4 teaspoons of baking powder. I forgot that I'm doubling this. So it's 4 teaspoons of baking powder. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of baking soda. We are also going to do 1 teaspoon of salt. I do not add sugar to my pancake batter because we're going to put sugar on top of the pancakes in the form of maple syrup. So we're adding 4 eggs now, and then we are going to add just a little bit of olive oil. I'm kind of eyeballing. It's probably about 4 tablespoons of olive oil, a little bit of vanilla extract. We're adding 3 cups of almond milk. You could use any kind of milk you want, or fruit juice or water, whatever liquid you like to put in your batter. And then we also put 4 eggs in there. And so we're going to get that all mixed together. And we're also, once again, going to be using these silicone molds from Super Cubes to go ahead and freeze these up. And just like with the zucchini bread, if I want to make pancakes the next day or waffles, I'll just pull one of these out of the freezer and let it thaw. and then the children can be whipping up waffles or flipping pancakes while I am out in the garden harvesting what we need to preserve for that day. So once again, I could go ahead and make the waffles and freeze them, but I feel like this is an easier way to fit the batter into the freezer, and it's saving me time on this particular day. All of this baking and prep work I'm trying to get done during my little one's nap time. I had about an hour and a half to get everything made and in the freezer and then everything cleaned up. And so I'm just working and getting as many meals done and accomplished during that little window of time that I had. And I was very pleased with the results. So there we go. There's probably a meal or so of waffles for the family. The next thing that I wanted to prep ahead are pie crusts. In the summer, I get very busy. We have a lot of produce coming in, and I want to bake pies, but what holds me up is not having the crust ready to go. And I really do like to make mine from scratch instead of purchasing them in the store. So my pie crust recipe is 2 cups of sifted flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 a cup of lard or whatever fat you like to use, butter, shortening, whatever, and 1/4 a cup of a cold liquid like milk or water. And then I just mix all of that together either with the food processor or I'm using my hands here. And then that will give me 2 crusts, one for the bottom and one for the top of a pie. And so I just decided that I would use the rest of the flour that I had ground up, and I was going to make as many pie crusts as I could get out of the rest of that flour and get them in the freezer so that I could make quick breakfast quiches or pies or even like chicken pot pie and things for dinner. It would make some easy meals during the month of August. So there we go. I got enough for several meals worth of pies, and I'm very excited to have that in the freezer. At this point in the day, I knew that the little children were getting ready to wake up from their naps, and so it was time for me to close up shop and get the kitchen cleaned up so that we can move on to the second half of our day. But I was very happy with the work that I was able to accomplish. This is going to make the month of August so much easier for me. As I mentioned, the garden is really starting to produce. We are about to hit the busiest season for food preservation here in my zone. I am right on the cusp of zones 5 and 6 here. And so as you can see here, my onions are just about ready to be harvested. We've got peppers everywhere. Tomatoes are just starting to come on. I'm about ready to harvest all of my carrots. I've got celery that I could harvest and preserve. Just so much food that is ready to be put in jars and up on the pantry shelves. And so I'm very excited about that. But for the most part, up until this point, what we're doing is just heading out to the garden every day and filling a basket with what we need for just that day's meals. And that is the priority for me during gardening season. I want to grow as much fresh as possible to make fresh meals that are homegrown from our garden throughout the growing season. And then anything that's left over, I will preserve to try to get us through the rest of the year. And since, the processes of preserving can sometimes lead to a little bit of nutrient loss, that's why I'd much prefer to eat the food fresh while it's available with peak ripeness, with all of those nutrients intact, freshly pulled out of the ground. While it's available. And then if I have to fill in from local farmers and things for the things that I'm going to preserve, I'm okay with that because I want my stuff that I grow to be enjoyed fresh when it tastes the best and it's the most nutrient dense. So I've got little Levi here helping me pick some items for this evening's dinner. Got some beautiful carrots that are just getting ready to be harvested. We've just been pulling from them as we need them, but pretty soon here I'm going to clear out this bed. A couple weeks ago I went ahead and sowed seeds for my fall crop of carrots, and those have already germinated, and I'm really excited about that. That fall batch will be what we will put in storage to get us through the winter. But this bed right here is all for fresh eating to be enjoyed right now. So we're adding our carrots here to the potatoes that we pulled. We have some green beans and cucumbers and peppers. Just like I said, we're just filling a basket every day, and then we'll go inside and we will just make a meal out of what we were able to harvest. It's just such a fun time of year to have this food coming in, to not have to go to the grocery store. We've got the freezer stocked full of meat. We've got an abundance of eggs. And now we have all the vegetables that our hearts could desire to eat and make fun meals. And this is the great part about the month of August, is that meal planning, meal preparation for dinners and things is pretty easy. We just bring food in from the garden, grab some meat, grill it up, add some fresh veggies, and we are good to go. But we are also starting to preserve already. Just because August is the heavy preservation month doesn't mean that that hasn't already been occurring, just on a smaller scale throughout the gardening season. So I brought in my first big crop of peppers this past week. These are yellow monster peppers, and they're my favorite bell pepper to grow. You can see they just produce these big, beautiful peppers. I just love these so much. Some of them I leave on the plants to go ahead and turn colors and sweeten up, but I also like to harvest enough to preserve so that we will have green peppers throughout the rest of the year. And so what I like to do with these is slice them up in little pieces, and I'll go ahead and freeze dry them. You could dehydrate them if you don't have a freeze dryer. And then these will be added to things like sloppy joes or taco meat or anything like that, breakfast casseroles and things throughout the rest of the winter months. I also had some zucchini to go ahead and cube up and some chamomile there so that I would have a full batch in the freeze dryer to go ahead and get this stuff preserved. So why don't I talk a little bit about some of the other things that I'm doing to prepare for the month of August and my Every Bit Counts challenge. I also, besides making a list of all of the things that I would like to preserve for the month, I also sat down and made a list of everything that I need to purchase so that I can be prepared to preserve anything on that list. So I'm going to make sure that I have enough sugar to make things like jams and jellies and things during the month of August. I want to make sure that I'm stocked up on my pectin. I'm making sure that I have enough vinegar to do any of the pickling that I want to do. I checked to make sure that I have enough canning lids to get through the season, and I went ahead and ordered some extra canning jars just so that I don't run out toward the end of the month. Making sure that I have enough salt in the house to do any of my fermenting projects that I need to do, and also for some canning. And then other little things like Mylar here. I want to make sure I have enough bags for all of the freeze-dried food that I'm going to be putting into storage, just things like that. So that's what I would suggest anyone do to prepare for the upcoming months of food preservation. Sit down, make sure you have everything in the house that you need, because there's nothing worse than being in the middle of a project and realizing, oh, I don't have enough sugar or enough canning lids to finish that out. So I will have another video coming out soon that will explain everything about the food preservation challenge and how you can participate. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.